two boards here, and so I have one here and one over here, and I call these my rally boards. You know, if I'm in a good way to practice is I'm using this old Pancho Gonzalez racket. And Pancho Gonzalez, if you don't know who he is, look him up. But here I'm just practicing with the old wood racket and practicing on my knees. And I'm just practicing against a small board, and it's a rally board. You don't need much room in order to practice, but I would suggest that perhaps you can use a short racket. You know, shorten your racket like this, and just practice if you know to get control. It looks easy. For me, but sometimes I know there's difficulty if you haven't played much tennis. If you played quite a bit of tennis, it's a good way of practicing. Short racket and then practice long racket. It's just a good way to practice, and you can practice both hands. You know, one hand I like to practice, like a short racket. Lengthen my racket, so I call it a long racket. Okay, I like to play right-handed, and then sometimes I like to play two hands like this. And then I like to practice just my left hand backhand, left hand. And so I can just do one hand like this, two hands, okay, or just the opposite hand. And so I can practice all three. And I do this way on the left hand side too. Practice one hand, okay, two hands, okay, or just a left-handed backhand like this. And this is a great time to practice with using extra hand too. And so you use the extra hand, and so a lot of times, many tennis players, the error they make is they don't use the extra hand. And so I call this a rally board, and I set it just on the floor. And now if I stand up here, then I can practice off, and I'll do backhand this time, and now I'm practicing my volleys. And so I call this a volley board. I just put it on the couch and I slant it, and I got this idea from someone in South America. And they put a board, slanted it, and it's a great way to have backboards to slant a little bit. And now I can practice on the couch, and so I just practice volleys. And so I'm practicing my backhand volley. I can also practice my left hand, in the same way. I can use a short racket, or I can lengthen my racket and use I can use two hands. Okay, you can use two hands, or I can just use one hand, the left hand. So left-handed, two hands. Okay. Okay, or just one hand and a backhand, so I can do all three. So I can do a backhand, okay? I can use two hands like this in a volley, okay? Or I can just use the left-hand volley. It's a great way of practicing. And I can also alternate, do different things. And on these boards, I usually have volley tips or rally tips that, you know, to help me focus. And so it's just a simple way of practicing. I hope this is helpful. I can use a sponge ball, or I can use I have a bigger ball here. I just picked this up at the store, at the thrift store actually, and it's a heavier ball. And I can also practice volleying. It takes a little bit more effort. It's a heavier ball. See how heavy it is? Okay, and so I can just, I use a different racket. That wood racket just not going to do it. So I use another one, a racket that I've picked up. I like to pick up a bunch of rackets at the thrift store. This happens to be an old one. And so I'm practicing. It's a Prince racket. And it actually feels pretty nice. I'm going to put a new grip on it and maybe eventually put some new strings in it. It'll feel really, really good. But I'll go to a thrift store and I'll pick up some old tennis rackets that are there, real cheap, and I just practice with them. And then a lot of times I'll take the kids to the field and we'll just throw tennis rackets for practicing serves. This is a great way of practicing. So just a great way of practicing. So here I can do the same thing. I'm going to do it on my backhand side here. And I'm going to go with this here, and I'm just practicing. Okay, it's a heavier ball. In fact, it's a sponge. It's like I would say it's more like a Nerf ball. Okay, and so I'm practicing. It's heavier, much heavier than the regular ball. And so here I'm just practicing. I can also just on my knees, and then I can practice my forehand this side, and try to use extra hand here. Okay, I can use a short racket. I can shorten my grip. I like to do that sometimes. A lot of times when I'm playing, if someone hits the ball right at me, I'll just use a short racket and hit it. And there it goes. Just tipped it over a little bit, but that's okay. I can always set it up. But that's how I like to practice on my knees, and a good way to practice in off season.